All right. Team, what's up, everybody? Great to be here. I apologize for the very early start. I'm down at South College teaching here at MSK3, and we've got to get over to campus here nice and early today. So apologize for the early wake up, but great to be here. I am Dr. Jeff Moore, currently serving as the CEO of ICE and lead faculty for cervical and lumbar spine divisions. Great to be here on a Leadership Thursday. We are going to chat. Ask not what you can start, but what you can sustain. That's going to be the topic today. Before we jump into that, a few courses coming up. It's a CrossFit Open, by the way, so no gut check Thursday. Usually we have that on Thursday, but not today. Speaking of CrossFit Open, good luck, Zach and Alexis Morgan, who are taking on the pros today at CrossFit Hendersonville, where the actual CrossFit Open live announcement is being broadcast from. So how unbelievable is that? If you happen to be free at 3 p.m. Eastern today, you can watch Zach and Alexis, Logan, Lindsay, CrossFit Hendersonville squad take on the pros live from Hendersonville, where Ice Sampler is going to be going down in 6 weeks. Watch that throwdown today. So could not be more excited for them to have this opportunity to showcase that beautiful gym. I just can't wait to be a part of all of that. So if you can tune in today, please do so. As far as courses coming up, this weekend, we have Fitness Athlete Live in Candler, North Carolina. We have Total Spine Thrust in Milwaukee, Oregon, not Wisconsin. And Cervical Spine is going to be in Nampa, Idaho. Next weekend, we have Fitness Athlete Live down at Lake Mary. That is with Lenny, Joe, and Mike and the crew at SST. Always fun to teach down there. Pregnancy and postpartum at Onward Greenville, and Total Spine Thrust up in Vancouver. So good to be back in Canada. I know Justin has a huge class. I want to say there's 35 or 40 folks signed up. Going to be a blast. I believe Heather and Alex from Onward Bellingham are going up there with them, along with he and Britt. It should be an absolute hoot. So a lot of great stuff on the horizon. The topic today is ask not what you can start, but what you can sustain. So let me try to give you some perspective on this. So it's Leadership Thursday. We talk a lot about business principles and success and failure in that space. There's a big difference between starting a venture. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's your PT practice. I don't care if it's your other small business. I don't care if it's your side hustle. There's something very different about starting a business venture today than it was a couple of decades ago. It's not better or worse, but it is relevantly different. So if you flash back a couple decades, all the grind when you were launching something, all of the grind was front loaded. Invariably, your business started slowly, right? There was really no way to get a ridiculous jump out of the gates, to be a huge flash in the pan really early on. Business started really slowly. You had to earn every win with really quality delivery. There wasn't a way to have a perception of success really early on. And that was pretty true for everybody in all business. If you fast forward nowadays, it's the opposite. Again, this is not better or worse. It's just really important we understand the difference. If you fast forward nowadays, it's kind of the opposite. Out of the gates, you can do a lot of things to kind of make a really big bang. Right? You can have a reel that goes viral or something of that nature where you have an explosion of popularity and it makes it feel like you're really successful even though you just started. You can essentially purchase that big bang out of the gates, right? You throw that pixel on and you put a little bit of money behind retargeting. You can make a lot of volume and a lot of noise very early on. You can have the perception of success artificially now in a way that many years ago you just couldn't. The reason that's a problem, the reason I think that is the bigger challenge of the two scenarios of the early grind versus the early success. The reason I think it's a bigger challenge is because that early success that really isn't based off merits. It's more based off strategy, off where you're financing your initial noise. That early success can really create a lot of blind spots. It's not enduring. It's not really giving you accurate reflection or data. It's giving you blind spots that, hey, this is working, when really the qualities that are going to sustain very long term aren't there. And the reason this is so devastating is because you can wind up investing for a couple of years a lot deeper than maybe you would if you didn't have that big flash in the pan. You can wind up investing for a lot of years because you think what you're doing is working when in reality it really doesn't have legs. And the issue there is now, as opposed to grinding hard and not having any success at all for 8 months and saying, you know what, we gotta pivot. Like this just isn't catching on, etc. Now you wind up quite a ways into it, and you sort of have the ego involvement that what you were doing was working, and then it comes crashing down. So the fact that nowadays you can essentially purchase the perception of early success, you can wind up a bit diluted. And that has real consequences. I'm not saying don't purchase the early success. I'm just saying be aware of that fact that you've got to kind of be on guard and almost be suspicious about, is that early traction really a reflection of merit of what you're doing? Or is it more a reflection of the fact that the way that you organize yourself upon launch was advantageous? Be wary of that. So, because you have to be wary of that, I want to give a few thoughts on, if you can't really count on that early success being a really good reflection on what's going to be enduring upon merits, what can you think about as far as, okay, if I can't count on that, how do I know if this thing is going to work long term? Here's a few things I'd ask you to reflect on when you're thinking about, I want to start this business, I want to do this side hustle. You want to challenge yourself to not think about what you can start, but what you can sustain. What are a few check boxes, if you will, that you might tick to know which one of those it is? Here's a few of them. Number one, you're always going to be able to sustain something that is an absolute bullseye for your why. That's always a home run. So the number one thing to think about is not, am I doing this because I think that I've crunched the numbers, there's a way to make profit off this, but this is a deep reflection or an excellent alignment with my why. I can't imagine ever not doing it. Even if this didn't work out, I would have to do this in some way, shape, or form because this is what I believe in. When something is a dead ringer for your why, you have almost a guaranteed ability to sustain. This is honestly when folks ask me on a podcast or what have you, or somebody catches me at a course and says, should I do this, or should I become a PT? I get that question a lot. My answer is always, if you couldn't imagine not trying to make people healthier, no matter where you go in life, like no matter what you do that is so inside of you that you're going to wind up doing some personal training or wind up being a CrossFit coach, there's no way you can stop yourself from trying to make the people around you healthier. If that is in you like that, yes, do this, because I have absolutely no doubt you'll be able to sustain this, because even on days where you're not getting returns, it is part of your why, so it's always worth it to you. If it's a bullseye for your why, you're going to be able to sustain. Okay. Number two, and this one is the one that's not thought about nearly often enough. If what you're thinking about launching directly supports other things you're also trying to grow, it's an ROI multiplier, and it's going to be so much easier to sustain. So I'm always thinking about, if we're going to launch something in any area of our businesses, does the success of that thing nurture the success of the things we've already launched? So it's hard to quantify this, but in my mind, I always feel like if I put energy towards this venture and it grows by 100%, do the other things that I'm involved with passively grow by 30%? That's what's always in my head. I don't have those numbers crunched out, but that's the gut feeling I have. If every time you advocate or devote energy to a new thing, does it grow the things you already care about, that you're already involved in, that you already have relationships in? If that answer is yes, you're getting more return on investment for every ounce of energy you put into any of the buckets. And those are the kind of things that wind up being sustainable. If you launch something completely disconnected to everything else you're involved in, every time you're over there, you're completely not over here. And that will get exhausting because none of the energy multiplies across buckets. So really think about, is this new thing that I'm going to do gonna foster and grow everything I've already done. And the more yeses you have in that conversation, the more likely you're going to be able to sustain it. Number three, do you have a pipeline? Do you have a pipeline? This is thought about, but it's not prioritized enough because this is everything. Your team is only as good as the people who are trying to join it. If there's one sentence that explains the long game of business, it's that one. Your team is only as good as the people who are trying to join it, not the ones who are already on it, right? The people who are trying to join it, because that's always the future. That's always the next phase. If you don't have people to put into areas of expansion where you realize, oh, you know what, we could be over here. You got to have bodies for that, right? Every time you realize a new opportunity, if you don't have people to go over there, you can't satisfy the demand. If you can't add people to the teams who are in your fastest growing markets, you can't satisfy demand. If you don't have people coming in to take positions of more veteran people who want to move on to the creative, innovative space of what you're doing and expand kind of your entire ethos of the organization, if you don't have folks to step in, you're not going anywhere. Your team is only as good as the people who are lining up to join it. That's the one. When I'm always shocked how many chips people put in buckets where they have no bench. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's good now, but where is this going to be in 7 years, 11 years, 4? Have you even thought about how you're going to fill these seats or how you're going to expand? Think about how you're going to fuel the business from a perspective of literally adding folks to it while you're thinking about whether you're going to launch it. And those should be big factors in one another. Your team is only as good as the people who are trying to join it. Do you have a pipeline? Okay, number 4, final one. Does working on this business often induce the flow state? So if you've never had a chance to read anything about the flow state, the number one book that I would recommend is Art of the Impossible. Because in that book, they really carve out how the flow state is not some arbitrary philosophical thing. It is a measurable chemical environment in the human that's happening when a lot of things are in alignment. And you can create these states. And when you're in them, you are incredibly effortless, right? You're getting a ton done with very minimal investment. It tends to give back a lot of energy and you are insanely productive. Well, does the thing you're thinking about doing induce the flow state? Not always. No one's ever going to be flowing all day, every day. But does the nature of that work, of that space, tend to push you in the direction of flow? Or does it always feel like an uphill battle, a slog, right? Those are two night and day differences. You've got to choose things. You've got to choose spaces that when your energy is there, you are often in flow. You often look at the clock and you're like, whoa, it's been 3 hours. That is my favorite thing teaching, right? We'll look down and be like, holy cow. Like I love when students get in flow and they're like, I feel like I just got here. It's 4 o'clock. We're about to work out. Like those moments when you're hearing that from other people, when you're looking at your watch and saying, whoa, where'd the time go? When people around you are saying, oh my gosh, that flew by. When you start losing track of time because you are so engaged in what you're doing, think really hard about how you can spend more of your time doing that stuff. Those 4 things in a new world where early success is probably not as good of an indicator of whether or not you're really going to be able to endure and sustain. In that new reality, think about those 4 check boxes instead. Maybe don't give early success quite so much credit on foreshadowing and think about number 1, is this really in line with my why? If this doesn't work, do I have to find another way to do it because I love this stuff? This is where I want to be. Does it align with your why, with your purpose? Does this new business or venture support other things you care about, other things you've started, other relationships you have? Is it going to help other people you're currently working with? Is it going to raise all boats? Or is it totally isolated from everything else you've been trying to grow for the past X amount of years? Number 3, do you have a pipeline? Your team is only as good as the people who are trying to join it. Do you have a space, a recruitment pipeline, a development pipeline, an area you can pull people so as you create opportunities, you have people who can actually fill them? Number 4, do you flow? When you're working on this stuff, do you lose track of time? Do other people say, "How did you get that done so fast?" Do you find yourself energized when you're done? Are you flowing when you're in that space? If you have a lot of checks in those boxes, send it. If you don't be fooled by early success. Let that guide you. It's not what you can start, it's what you can sustain. Team, have a wonderful Thursday. I'm over to campus for MSK3 Day 2. Cannot wait. Our squad here is incredible. Good luck, CrossFit Hendersonville. Can't wait to watch that. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day.